Hey guys, this is my 1982 GMC one-ton crew cab. You may have seen other videos that I've done on it. I'm kind of excited because I'm going to put on a 4-inch lift on here. I've got a ORD off-road design 4-inch lift that's going to go on here. The suspension on this is pretty sagged right now, so it may even give me more than 4 inches. But I've been wanting to do it for a while and kind of excited about it. I think I'm going to do 2 videos, one for the rear, one for the front, so I'll throw a link up here, but should be fun. So before we start taking the truck apart, I'm going to measure from the center of the axle to the bottom of the fender trim, and then we can measure after the lift and determine how much lift we actually got. On the rear here we've got 22 5/8 is the measurement. Here we are on the front. I'll give it a quick measure. And that's 22 1/8 on the front, so we'll redo this after the lift and tell the overall lift we got. So the lift that I bought from ORD came in 2 boxes from ORD, and then the front springs are drop shipped from Tuff Country. Here's the first box. Haven't really got into it much yet. Essex Shocks, 4 corners. It's a Dana 60 U-bolt kit. It's better to get new U-bolts rather than reuse them. This is a drop pitman arm for steering correction. That looks like. And obviously 3 more shocks in there. Here's the second box from ORD. The bill, and actually gives you some instructions for the shackle flip for the rear. Here are the shackle flip brackets. The 1-ton and the other trucks have different brackets, so make sure you specify, but they look really nice. Nice welds. Second bracket. And I bought the front Greasable bolts and heavy-duty shackle kit. My front shackle is really close to the frame, and this gets it a little bit further away, so I wanted to do that. And also I got the Greasable bolts for the front of the front springs. But anyway, that's it except for the springs. I'll show you those in a little while. You can see, obviously, I've got the bed off the truck now. This is not necessary to install the lift, but I've been needing to redo my soft fuel lines for a while, and they're kind of underneath the bed in a hard-to-reach location. So taking the bed off helped me there, and it helps with the lift and helps with the filming, actually. So it's not necessary, though. So this is the back of the truck. This is the stock shackle mounting bracket right here. This is the shackle itself, and obviously this is the spring. The way the ORD shackle flip works is you take this bracket off and you mount the new bracket. So the spring mounts at a lower position, and that's where you get your lift. You can see here it's higher, and if you mount it lower, it raises the truck up. So this is a 4-inch. They also make a 2.5. These are a little bit more expensive than a block, and they're just generally accepted to be safer and a better way of doing it. So our first step here is we need to raise the back of the truck up, put it on jack stands, and then we're going to disassemble this, take the spring off of the bracket, and then we need to get the bracket off the frame, and that requires removing these rivets. So real quick, I do want to mention, you guys need to be safe with this. Make sure you wear eye protection and gloves, because using a lot of big hammers and grinding and stuff like that. First of all, support the rear of the frame with the jack stands and put a jack under the rear axle. The instructions tell you to remove the shackle, take these bolts out, and that sounds easy, but in reality it can be pretty difficult. These bolts here, you know, likely have been in for over 30 years. So on my truck, what happened is there's a steel sleeve inside the rubber bushing, and that has rusted to the bolt. So you can't get the bolts out. It's pretty frustrating. I did not, in the beginning, order a heavy-duty shackle and a greasable bolt kit for the rear, but since I found out I'm going to have to basically destroy this just to get it apart, I went ahead and ordered it from ORD. I just finished doing the other side, and what I did there was I cut this bolt head off, and then I cut the shackle hanger off right here. So when you remove the nut on the back side, you should be able to pull that off, except that it's stiff with the spring. So then I went ahead and removed the rivets, the 4 here, and then there's 2 on the underside, and then the shackle hanger bracket could come off and swing down, and then I would be able to pull this bolt out that way. So it's kind of complex, but just make sure you allow a lot of time for this because it's a little bit difficult. Different people like to remove these rivets in different ways. What you can do is you can torch them out, you can plasma cut them out, you can cut an X in them and chisel them off, or you can drill them. What I actually ended up doing, for the ones that you can get to easily, like these 3 and the 2 on the back side, I ground them down flush with a flap disc wheel in the grinder. This 4th one over here, you can't really get the grinder to, so I drilled it. And then I used some pry bars and chisels to pull the plate away, chisel down from the sides and pulls the plate off. Again, it takes a while, so make sure and leave yourself enough time. I wanted to show you guys a technique that I've been using to remove these stuck bolts. Again, we got a bolt that is inside a bushing with a steel sleeve in there, and the steel sleeve is rusted to the bolt. So it won't just slide out, and you know, you could beat on this all day and probably bend up the brackets. So what I do is grind or cut off the bolt head, and then you stack on some washers and put the nut back on and just start cranking on it, and it starts to pull that bolt through there. You'll have to take off the nut and add more washers eventually, but it will come out, and that's a lot safer than, you know, damaging this bracketry. It's been pretty critical for this project. On this side you can see I've got the shackle and shackle hanger removed and punched out the rivets. Again, there's 2 underneath here also. So the shackle flip kits use the existing springs, so you keep your existing carrying capacity, which is a bonus. If you're going to use these bushings, you know, you don't really have to do anything, but you know, they're probably pretty old. I would consider changing them if I were you. If you are going to remove them, they're just notoriously difficult to get out. A lot of people will melt them out with a torch, or you can drill with a small drill bit all the way around here, and it finally loosens up, and then you can pound out the bushing. After you remove the center steel sleeve and the rubber portion of the bushing, there's still a real thin steel sleeve on the outside. They say it's easiest to cut with a Sawzall or a hacksaw right here where the spring eye wraps around. There's kind of a little gap here, so just cut it there and then knock it out. You can see I've got most of the suspension disassembled and almost ready to go back together. Obviously I painted the frame. There were some extra brackets on there that weren't being used, some exhaust hangers that aren't being used right now, and 4 brackets for an old 5th wheel hitch. So I took all those off and cleaned up the frame some, put a few coats of black on there. I would encourage you to, at a very minimum, paint the frame here where the shackle flip's going to go. The chance of you taking it off in the future to paint underneath it is pretty slim, so just go ahead and paint while it's off. So I'm working on the project for a couple more days in my spare time. What's been taking so much time is that when I got deeper into the project, I noticed that 3 or 4 of the leaves in my leaf spring pack were broken, so I had to source these new springs. If you need to buy new springs, make sure and shop around, because there's a really wide variety of prices for the same product. There's like a a number that they designate for the springs, and you can type that into internet search and find lots of different places. Just make sure you check the shipping. So once you knock out the old spring eyes, you just press the polyurethane bushings in there. Make sure you grease them up beforehand because it makes it a lot easier. The same with the shock eyes, the grease makes it a lot easier. Back to the shackle flip, ORD sends these bolts with, you have to drill out the frame holes just a tiny bit bigger, but the holes are already there. So from this point we just need to add the shackle itself and hook everything up. So here's the shackle installed. This is the ORD Super Shackle. Here is the stock shackle. You can see it's bent. I bent that by hand pretty easily when I was removing it, and you can see my bolts are seized in there, so that's why I went with these guys. Here is the other Super Shackle. You can see it's pretty beefy piece, so nice work. One thing I wanted to make note of is that these mounting points on the shackle hangers are offset, so this one is specific to this side of the truck. The mounting point is offset from the center, so you want them where the mounting point is towards the cab of the truck. When you're assembling all this, you have to lift the truck, adjust the height so that the bolt holes line up. Here we are above the rear axle. You can see that this is the rear soft brake line here. I've got it disconnected from the frame so there's enough slack when I'm installing the lift. What you don't want is there to be a lot of tension on this when you're installing the lift, or definitely when you're driving. It could rip this out and you could lose your rear brakes. This is a extended braided brake line from ORD. You can see it's about 4 inches longer than the stocker, and this will prevent there from being too much tension on the brake line when the suspension articulates. Here are the new Tuff Country SX8000 shocks on here. When you're installing a lift that's anything over just a tiny lift, you need to do new shocks because they don't have enough travel to handle the new lift. You could damage the shocks. Also, make sure and take note of which way the shocks are supposed to be oriented. In this case, the body of the shock is supposed to be down. And if you had to destroy your lower mounting bolts, the size is 9/16 by 3 inches long. So here's the truck with the rear lift finished. It looks kind of funny with just the rear lifted and the front still low, but the lift ended up giving me more than 4 inches. I'm going to do a measurement for you in just a minute here. It was a fun project. It took quite a bit longer than I expected because my particular truck is a little bit rusty. But luckily I was able to replace a lot of those rusty parts. So anyway, I think it looks good, and it'll look better when the front's done, obviously. So here we are at the back of the truck, going to do a measurement to see how much lift we actually got. And I measured 28 3/4, so we got a little bit over 6 inches of lift, which is obviously more than we expected for a 4-inch lift. I think that came from a couple different places. The new spring pack that I had to replace because of the broken leaves is about a 1/4 inch taller, so that gave a little lift. Then there's the Super Shackle on the back that's about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch longer than the stock shackle. And I think the rest of it probably came from just settled out old springs. So I think that's where the extra lift came from. I'll keep you updated on whether or not this settles in a little bit as the springs break in. Right now it hasn't even been hardly driven, so it might come down a little bit. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing and let me know if you have any questions.